This is the all-new Jaguar I-PACE, the first all-electric series production Jaguar. And today on Autogefuehl, your number one resource for in-depth car reviews and your number one community to discuss cars. With Thomas, we're going to take a detailed look on the exterior, interior, and of course the electric driving experience. A fresh breeze in the world of electric mobility. And since we also know the Tesla Model X and also recently the Audi e-tron, we will also talk about the differences between those three full electric competitors. Now in full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! The Jaguar I-PACE has this typical Jaguar front with a big front grille. However, this one here is rather closed in this dot structure because there's not so much cooling than for the electric motors needed. Optionally, you can also get those matrix LED headlamps, which are also included here. This one is a so-called first edition, so basically full spec model. Maybe at a later stage we can also show you then a lower spec model. The entry price is about 80,000 euros here in Germany, and with the first edition you get about 20,000 euros extra at least. So this is also a price region then of a Tesla Model X, a little bit less expensive, and probably also something with the Audi e-tron if you then pick also some equipment in it. What's your first impression here from design? Of course, Ian Callum tried to do something Jaguar-alike, but then again, also has some unique character for a Jaguar EV. 4.68 m or almost 15'4" is the total length of the Jaguar I-PACE. If you compare it here to the Audi e-tron or the Tesla Model X, this one here is a little bit shorter. However, battery capacity-wise, here 90 kilowatt hours, also range-wise will be about 450 kilometers. This is all equal between those three big electric competitors now. Here you can see you get 18 to 22 inch rims. Those ones here are directly in the middle, 20 inch. Probably also a good compromise visual wise and also still riding comfort wise, which will be a steel suspension as base. And here also we have today the optional air suspension, which of course increases the comfort. By the way, in the front we also have the charging plug right there, also for the DC charging in the lower part. And here, we always get the question, how long does this take to charge? It really depends on, do you use a household plug? Then you need basically a whole day from zero. But how often do you really go from 0 to 100? Then on a charging wall box or station, takes a couple of hours, and DC charging can just take you maybe an hour to go to 70% or something. So that really depends on your energy source. It doesn't have so much to do with the car. At least it offers different possibilities. By the way, those door handles here, they flip in and out. For example, when the car is closed or also when you're driving, then you can either hit the key or also press the button and then you can access the door handles. You can see also the mirrors flip out. Special orange paint here today, which is not my favorite. Is it yours? And then a Jaguar contrast painting in the lower part right there. And interesting, you can see the roof is falling down, so a pretty flat roof. We'll see how that one plays out then on the interior, because we also have the optional panoramic roof here today. Also the door handles in the rear go in to have then a rather streamlined effect. And well, where is the battery? You can see it in a cutaway model we've also prepared for you. The batteries are placed in the lower part of the vehicle between those almost 3 meters of wheelbase, so at the lower center of gravity, very good for sporty driving for sure. And the electric motors, one in the front, one in the rear, 200 horsepower each, so about 400 horsepower overall, and all-wheel drive, although there's no physical connection between the axles. Well, you have already seen that we do lose some trunk height because of this flat window in the rear part, but then again the very rear end is pretty straight. It has some kind of coupe look, but then from the rear perspective, very strong, then horizontally drawn tail lights right there, and a big diffuser like from a sports car, although there's of course no exhaust, but then we also don't have any problems with fake exhaust tips because there are actually none. The weight, by the way, is about 2,200 kilograms, so also comparable then to other big electric cars, or also those full-size SUV, for example. The weight is mainly resulting from the big battery pack. And well, it is an own platform, this Jaguar I-PACE. The most relative car would be the Jaguar F-PACE, where this one here got some parts from, but they are not really the same vehicles. The F-PACE also a higher SUV, and as I said, they share some parts, but basically it's still an own platform. And here another color variation, the vehicle in white. I think that looks better than the orange, I think. What do you think? And overall also good contrast to the dark front grille then. This is the car key, open, close, front trunk and the rear. We will also show you that very soon. And of course we've seen the folding out door handles. Then inside of the door we have here, in this case here, a dark shiny wood decor element. Of course you can pick between different other decor elements. Here, well, you have some space for bigger bottles, somewhat limited right there. The first edition, by the way, which we have here, is based on the HSE high trim level and then adds something more. And that's also the reason why it's pretty costly intensive. Interior, you can see it's a new steering wheel. We'll also show you more about it, also with those flat buttons we have there. Also a little more wood decor. All digital gauges, both left and right. Jaguar offers leather red as a standard model with the base model called Lux Tech. That's a good and more sustainable choice, so you can have that if you want to leave out animal skin. And this one here is the optional animal skin pack, and also with contrast stitches. And all electric the seats as well, with a lot of different controls. I'll soon have a first test sitting in there. Electric controls are all on the left. In some elements, this Jaguar I-PACE is between the Tesla Model X or S even, and the Audi e-tron. For example, Audi says, all the way animal skin, we don't care about sustainability. Tesla says we don't use leather anymore on the seats, we don't want that, doesn't fit to an electric sustainable vehicle or like futuristic vehicle. And Jaguar is something in between, so you can get both. Seating position, it is crossover indeed alike. It's not an SUV, so you have a somewhat slightly more upright seating position. For me, it's 1.86 m or 6'1". There is some headroom left, and when you have the panoramic roof, in this case, it does not cost you any headroom because it's one that you cannot open. It looks pretty amazing. Also leaves some light in the interior. They say, by the way, it is UV radiation resistant. That means supposed to leave light in but no temperature. Of course, this panoramic roof, be it as good as it is, will always heat the inside a little bit more up than if you just have the fixed roof, which is the standard one in this case. But considering it's a glass roof, there's not too much heat coming through. I've experienced it now when we had the car parked for an hour or so, and then it was not that seriously warm on the inside. So I think considering this, actually quite okay. The steering wheel can be manually adjusted right like this. A little bit complicated to get this loose, but then you can find a good position. Yeah, not the best of mechanisms here. In the electric seat control, you can, for example, put the lower area a little bit longer. Here, up and down, lot of control, lumbar support. And the seats themselves, they're not uncomfortable, but they're also not top of the segment. I would rate it. As for me, I can just state it as my personal preference. Somewhere in the middle, in between, as for the comfort wise. And also optional Meridian surround system you can get for this vehicle with pretty decent sound. So if you like music, that might also be an option you want to go for. And here we also have another interior choice. First of all, with carbon fiber decor elements. Also the rest is just bright, this beige style. Pretty nice, I think, overall. And you can see the seats are also different in the form. Those ones are the optional performance seats. In the lower part they're quite equal, but in the upper part you can see they're slimmer and have more shoulder support. Now the interior overview, and the first thing you realize is that the whole unit, how massive it is and how it comes towards you, it's a little bit like in a Land Rover for sure. Also this whole middle console, there's not much room here. So you feel a little bit caged in. It's sports car-like, although it's not a tiny sports car. That's negative in a sense of feeling room and space when traveling. On the other hand, it feels racy somehow. You can see this contour stitches on top of the leatherette surface right there. The screen is also standard, this central infotainment screen right there. You connect your phone via Bluetooth, that's the best one, because if you use the cable, CarPlay and Android Auto are not available. You can use the in-control apps, but I do not really recommend them. You also have a fake drone view from above, or also a normal rear view camera when you put in the reverse gear with a pretty good resolution right there. Then looking at the GPS, see here, the software menu is sometimes a little bit complicated, but it seems actually fast enough when browsing in the map. So overall I think it's quite okay, but maybe not the best. As for the electric controls, you swipe that way, and then here, for example, you can change the recuperation to high and low. I will also talk more about that later when we drive the vehicle, or you can also see this visualization of how much battery there is left. And you can also use the vehicle preconditioning. If you start at some point and want it hot or cold in the car, that's also possible. Then if we take an hour more broader look again, you can see next to the screen there's just this one knob for the volume. Everything else is basically almost knobless. In the lower part area then here, we have still physical buttons, or this turning jog for the temperature. This feels a little bit loose, and also you don't have such good feedback. This could have been made better, but the idea is pretty interesting with the glass on the inside, and then you change the temperature. You press and then have the seat cooling or the seat heating. You lift it again. Oh no, I don't want seat heating, it's just too hot. Well, press. See, it takes some time also. Now back to 0 again. So you lift it up again, and then when you lift it, you can get the vent strength. Press it again, and then you get to the temperature. And the same on the right side. This is also then where the air vents are coming from, but you can see it's not very well visible when it's daytime. At nighttime it looks pretty amazing, but at daytime, the glass is too thick, I think, and there's a lot of reflection where you can't see anything. In the lower part then you have the driving modes. Oh, let me get out the bottle so you can better see it. D, neutral, reversed and park. That's it, but there's still a start-stop button, you've already seen it. Some space to put your phone, for example, or the key. On the right side you pick some driving modes which have a minor effect. Talk more about that when we drive the car, and also lift or lower the air suspension. And finally, already shown you that some adaptive cup holders. They're pretty fixedly attached right there, but good, that keeps them tight, and you can get sometimes maybe too distracting to keep or get those bottles out. Maybe it should be a little bit smaller. I more prefer those adaptive plastic buttons here were inside the cup holders. Those rubber pads are sometimes too sticky actually, that it could be distracting. If you drive and bam, put the bottle out, and maybe then move the steering wheel or something like that. And there's also some more space below this armrest. It's also well attached. 2 USB ports in there, and really a lot of room. So And then there's the left side of the interior where we have this new steering wheel with a sporty inlay. Also new buttons. So far, those buttons were pretty cheap at the steering wheel. We've seen, for example, in the F-Type the first time, and later also in the Jaguar sedans. Here also heated steering wheel optional available, and those are a mix of physical and non-physical basically. So you have a haptical feedback when you touch them. For example, this one here to control the middle screen. At the same time, it's an even surface, and they can also be illuminated. So I think that's a better solution than they have before. And 12.3-inch digital gauges are also standard for the I-PACE, with good visualization, speed on the left, right side, range in the middle part. You can, for example, have the GPS info or some other information you might seek. And the head-up display also available, pretty clear display. You can see allowed speed, the current speed, and also the information of which gear you are at the moment in. And now let's get in the rear. And the door in the front was not opening that wide. Here in the rear, I think it's a little bit easier as an access also for the child seats, for example. We have ISOFIX on the outer part of the seats, for example. Also this nice wood trim on the inside. It would be a little bit too dark for me, but as I said, there are also other choices. Let's get inside, and well, it's not the longest vehicle, so you have to bear in mind that, for example, an Audi e-tron or a Tesla Model X will be longer. You can easily sit with 4 adults in here. Also, when there's a tall driver in the front, that works. And you know, we have some comparable other normal vehicles or ICE vehicles which have a little bit more legroom. So it's not the best package, but still I think it's quite reasonable still. You know, like a BMW X4 we recently had, which is approximately the same size, also has the same amount of legroom. Headroom, by the way, again, because this panoramic roof cannot be opened, there's still some headroom left directly underneath the glass, and pretty interesting. And you can see it's very well shaded in a way that I rather see the image of the interior in front of me than the ceiling. Pretty interesting. And by the way, have you seen that one here? This notch style, like this iPhone 10 or iPhone X, however you want to call it. This notch style here, how the glass roof is laid in. It's a little bit laying backward seating position, but overall I think you cannot complain that much. Quite cozy here on the inside. You see here, this one is blocking, you know, your view here to the left a little bit because of this coupe style. You can flip the seats already from here, but of course we'll show you soon. Sorry, how it looks like from the trunk. And one thing I really wonder, you know, with those electric vehicles, you usually say, you know, there's no transmission tunnel or so we leave that one out. But here there is still somewhat a small transmission tunnel, although there's no transmission. So you cannot really sit very well as a third adult in the middle part. You can sit here, but again, pretty limited due to this AC unit. Maybe we have also seen it in the Audi e-tron that they didn't manage to do that very well. But then again, you have some fancy stuff, the optional 4-zone AC where you can control the cooling and heating right there. You also have seat heating also for the rear seats. That's possible. And in the lower part, you have 2 more USB supplies and another 12-volt power supply. Both the rear hatch and the front trunk, the frunk, you can open from left next to the steering wheel from the inside, or also with the key, so both is possible. Then you have to unlock it here furthermore, like a normal hood. And oh, this is pretty small. You can put some small stuff in here, like a bag or something, but maybe another cable which you don't use that often. For example, if you have 2 or 3 different cables, then you store one, you don't use that often here, and the other one in the rear or something. This one is here just 27 liters more luggage room. Well, what about the rear hatch? The button is very much below down there. Or use the key again, that's also possible. The electric hatch is opening. 650 liters base setup here. And you have this, you know, cable spot below that, right there. It's a little bit limited in height, as we've seen with other electric vehicles, and also here because it has this coupe falling roofline. Here, more limited in height again. Manual cover, and You can take a look how it looks here, like with the cabin trolley. This still fits when you put it upright here size-wise. I think you can very well work with that. Trunk is, I think, overall okay. But you can see that also here in the width, you lose a lot of room, basically. So it's again also not the best package with this vehicle. If you want to flip the seats, you have to go around to the rear part and then put them like this. And then let's see what maximum loading setup we can get in liters. It is 1,450 liters, maximum boot volume. And here we go then. If we put up the head restraint, we can get it a little bit flatter like this. So that you see it raises a little bit, but overall I think still quite usable. However, with my mountain bike handlebars, that might get a little bit close right there. And talking about closing, what about the child safety test with the sensor here? Oh, nice. And also says meep meep. Let's start the driving experience in Thomas's electric driving lounge today. Just press this D mode button here in the center console and off we go super silently. This is of course nothing Jaguar I-PACE. I-PACE would also be a cool name maybe. Well, nothing specific to the I-PACE, just to an electric vehicle, and that's again really cool. And it also remains silent. Now we're driving about 70 kilometers an hour. Also drive a little bit faster. And we already feel that this car, look at that. Cool acceleration in the corner, now at 100. And it's pretty silent, so the sound insulation is pretty good. Also better as in the Tesla Model X, I feel. Stays more silent. In this respect, probably the Audi e-tron will be the best because they're usually the best at that one. Couldn't test at higher speeds yet, but of course we'll do that at a later stage. Then there are two different recuperation modes you can set, a low recuperation and a higher recuperation. I recommend the high recuperation because, when driving here those electric vehicles, by the way, now acceleration out of the corner, let's just hammer it. And that's 80. Wow. 4.8 seconds is the acceleration figure to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. So pretty impressive, and this feels really spontaneous. This rather feels like a Tesla P model, like those performance models. So also you feel that the all-wheel drive is distributed quite evenly. That's really good. Front and rear axle accelerating at the same time with the, if you want, with the same momentum as well. Pretty cool. Also, this air suspension is on the one hand giving you comfort when you have some road bumps, but at the same time it is set out quite sporty, so you have a good feedback from the suspension, and that feels actually sportier than some of the other non-crossover Jaguar models. It feels like driving a crossover, not as a high SUV like, for example, the Jaguar F-PACE, but not as a standard passenger car. So really this crossover style works, I would say. You get a little bit more upright seating position, also good comfort basically, and this lower center of gravity because the heavy battery pack is placed in the lower bottom of the car. This really helps. Look at that. The steering also pretty direct. Great new steering setup, also better than in the other Jaguars. It feels more natural at the same time. It doesn't have this super dead zone. You can see here there's something happening also in the very low angle areas. That's pretty cool, and it really feels sporty. So you see there's hardly any tilting to the left and the right, although we have the air suspension. On the other hand, we've experienced some sports cars which have air suspension, but then laid out that stiff that you don't feel anymore it's an air suspension. It comes close to that somewhat. So if you would tell me, it's a very good sporty adaptive suspension, I could say, yeah, that's maybe the case. Well, then you feel it's an air suspension when you, for example, go slower and you maybe in an off-road situation and you put it a little bit higher. up to 50 centimeters of wading depth, like a Land Rover Defender or something. We can also change it while driving. This is the so-called access height. For example, when you want to change something, but normally load something, but normally you'd stay at the normal height, and the off-road height you can select it at lower speeds. Now I feel the car is a little bit more upright. Somehow a funny feeling. Now it becomes more SUV-alike. See, it also shakes a little bit more. Let's see, it usually should go down automatically when I go a little bit faster. I think so. There it is. So above 80 kilometers an hour, the normal height is selected then of the air suspension. Let's see if it goes back, or you have to go for it again. Yeah, I think you have to go for it again then. But usually you just say at normal riding height. So the acceleration is really powerful, as I mentioned. At the same time, you can drive the car in a very smooth way, so you can really finely tune this acceleration pedal. That's also the difference then of the driving modes. You can have the dynamic driving mode. Let's see if the steering is changing somewhat. Oh, truck race in front of us. Comfort mode. Dynamic mode. Well, the most thing is happening that the instrument clusters are being changed, and Jonas is throwing some displays all over the vehicle. Jonas, cameraman today, by the way, hats off to him. Great pictures. Well, the thing that's being done most in the driving mode chain is really, with this visualization in the front cockpit and the throttle input. Other than that, it doesn't matter so much which driving mode you are in. So you can just also, for example, leave it with the so-called eco mode or whatever. So with the recuperation, how strong is it really? So if I go off the pedal, I also go to the home screen, scroll left. So when I have it set to low, go off the pedal, slight braking is happening. When I set it to high, let's go over this hill adjuster, that's really realistic. Filming near the Nürburgring here today, by the way. Pretty racing, mysterious area. Go through, see here, not braking, car is decelerating quite heavily. It's not as heavy as in the Tesla, so and a little bit stronger than in the Audi e-tron, something in between. So they have set it out that you could do a one pedal feeling, but not in all situations. With the Tesla, you can do this one pedal driving in all situations, basically. Only maybe emergency. The Audi e-tron is set up in a way that they just want to use the rolling speed. They want to have it rather driving like a normal Audi A6, for example. And just some recuperation, you can set it in 2 different levels when you drive the car as well, but not really hardly recuperating. Here, it's again something in between. So I would set it just to high, because usually when you lift the throttle, you want to decelerate the car somehow, and then you can also gain back the energy. Jaguar claims that the energy you could gain back from that would be up to 20% or up to 25% even. That's a lot, Usually you say something 10 to up to 20% of the energy you can gain back from recuperation. 25% would be really very much. So I think we have to confirm that maybe at the endurance test or something. Can't do that today, but it's actually pretty promising. Here, by the way, now. See, you don't have to turn the steering wheel that much. Quite progressive steering, and the car doesn't tilt. It feels sporty, feels stiff also. Chassis-wise, they've worked on that. Wow, really cool. It is a lot of fun to drive the car. That's, I think, one of the main characteristics here. Now at 100 kilometers, it's still quite silent in here. The thing is that above a speed of 85 kilometers an hour, also from the inside, seen from the inside, the wind noise is the dominating noise in the vehicle. From the outside, it's already at 25 kilometers an hour, or 50 kilometers an hour for a truck. That then, tire noises and stuff are stronger than the motor. But from the inside, you can drive about 80 kilometers, 85 kilometers And then above that, the wind noise gets the deciding factor. And sometimes we had the discussion in an electric vehicle, maybe do you hear more wind noise because you don't hear the engine? Yeah, that's surely an important argument or a factor, but at some point you also still hear the differences then. And for example, with the Teslas, which are great in a lot of respects, but wind insulation wise, I stick to my point that the Teslas are pretty noisy at really high Autobahn speeds, which is again just a German problem, because usually you won't have a lot of like 140, 150 kilometers an hour or something, 110 miles per hour, hardly in any other country. So, but when it's silent here at 100, 120 something, then it's also already pretty good, and that's the case here in the Jaguar I-PACE. So again, the thing I like most about the car is the sporty handling, and that also plays out that it's really a crossover and not really a high SUV. So it's not giving you any driving fatigue, for example, like some of those crossovers or SUVs where you at some point say, I don't like to move it that far in those corners. But here, pretty decent. And again, you can have it as a smooth acceleration forth and back. And I think this is also between those three big competitors at the moment. Of course, there will also be the Mercedes EQC, which will then also playing in this field at the moment with the Audi e-tron and the Tesla Model X. And this one here is actually the driver's car, I would say. You also feel a little bit caged in this cockpit in the front. You have the least room of those three. That's again, for a spacious traveling feeling, for example, maybe not that good. But then again, it creates this very, very sporty atmosphere. So that's what they also try to achieve. So this is here a big electric vehicle which sets sails on the sporty method of driving, and this is definitely working. Probably the unique selling point of this car. So now we're getting a little bit slower, a little bit more in the what would be city traffic, although it's pretty rural here. Again, super silent, smooth, great in the neighborhood, not creating so much noise. Here, especially in the Nürburgring area, a lot of people drive with their tuned vehicles, for example, and they make a lot of noise, and maybe some racing fans, they like that, but some maybe don't. And with this car, you can go racing, basically, speed-wise. You can easily out-accelerate some of the other vehicles driving around here, but at the same time, there is no noise. And you do not miss the noise, because it still feels sporty, even without the noise. That's pretty much okay then. So now when we're going, for example, downhill, the recuperation is also pretty useful. Of course, it is also recuperating when you hit the brake pedal to an extent, when you need more braking power than the real brakes set in. But of course, you do save some, brake durability, for example, as you don't use them that often, they will also hold longer. In general, the electric vehicles will have less servicing, less parts that actually could go wrong. Well, I guess the only thing that could go wrong are the electronics. But actually that's the case nowadays for every vehicle, also the internal combustion engine cars. I think like 40 or 50% of all failures are just electronic these days, because there's so much built in those vehicles nowadays, where you sometimes also cannot repair it yourself. There's now, by the way, another very nice handling part. Oh, kitty. Always pay attention to kitties watching out, don't drive over them. So never drive too fast, especially inside those living areas. Turning indicator, by the way, a little bit loud, don't you think so? I think it could be a little bit more subtle. Now it's getting dark in the forest, but there are some great corners to catch. Really cool. That's the key. Jonas, can you hold on to the key here? Good. Okay, now thumb thrown on the ground. Now we're getting this car to the maximum. Where is it? Well, we'll search for the key later. First we'll enjoy those corners. I always hate with something in the car is rattling, which is flying around. Here, very... Wow, cool. Also those corners, you know, although we have the long wheelbase, the car is still pretty agile. Also in those hairpin corners. You maybe heard it, a little bit of tire squeaking. I'm really pushing the limit of this vehicle a little bit. And also how you can accelerate out, you know, the torsional stiffness of the vehicle. So I can really say, being it electric or not, it is one of the most fun Jaguars to drive. Yeah, you know, of course the F-Type is sportier, but this one is then also again a little bit more comfortable. And that's, you know, sometimes when you get out of the F-Type after a long ride, you think, oh, my lower back, oh. But here that's definitely better. Long-term comfort driving-wise, I think it will be a little bit better in the Audi e-tron, because they have a better seating technology, also a better supplier for the seats. This one here is quite okay, but I already feel the longer I ride, it could be a little bit more comfortable for taller people. So not 5 out of 5 stars, maybe like 3.5 or something for that. But 5 stars definitely for the driving dynamics. We also have some assistance systems here, by the way. Since today we have no problems with being overtaken. Tell you there's a blind spot monitor in the side mirrors you can get. There's also an autonomous emergency brake, which is standard. And then you can also set, for example, well, there's a speed limiter, but also a cruise control. You can set it here on the steering wheel, and there's also a run-off road protection. If you're getting close, for example, to the side of the road. I also get a warning in the display. Head-up display also is doing a good job. You can see the speed and the allowed speed just in the middle of my, well, the lower middle of my sight, so I don't have to look down to the big instruments then. And for winter times, I can also activate the heated steering wheel on that side. The new steering wheel design, by the way, is also pretty cool. So I like that also while driving. Feels somehow more premium, more worthy, also with this new button design. I mentioned that in the interior part. And well, we went a little bit uphill, then a little bit downhill, and I think you got the impression that I was driving pretty sporty, didn't I? And at the same time, the energy consumption, okay, we had some more downhill now, you know, with those corners. But so after going downhill, the consumption is at the moment at about 17 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That would be excellent. Of course, tested it earlier a little bit more when you have some more acceleration in there. And some more uphill, it will go up also above 20. Wait a minute, this is a good straight to test the acceleration again. So, watch out from 0 and let's hammer it. Plop. That's over 100 already. What was that horning from the car? Strange, right? Why was the car horning? Maybe it's like, hello, I'm ready for acceleration. Strange. Maybe it had something to do with the speed limiter or something. I don't know. Never experienced that. If some of you guys know, leave it in the comments. At least the car told us. Now we're starting with the acceleration. Pretty funny. So overall, really cool driving experience. Now using the recuperation again, not the brakes. And I think, well, about, you know, the average consumption will be something over 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and then it already gets realistic again if you calculate it with 90 kilowatt hours and a range of, you know, 450. Jaguar sometimes promises 480 kilometers. It really depends on the surface, on the terrain, on the driving style, but you know, those vehicles all come close then somewhat in the range. A range figure that is surely enough for most usages. Okay, when it gets narrow here a little bit, by the way, also good test. This car is not as bulky as an Audi e-tron and especially as Jaguar Tesla Model S, Tesla Model X and S. It feels, because feels agile and sporty, and also it's a little bit shorter and you feel those dimensions, so it doesn't feel too bulky. You don't feel lost in more narrow situations. The only thing, I criticized it in the interior part as well, that from the front until the cockpit here, this part here, everything that comes so much towards you and is actually, closing you off somehow, and it's too wide a little bit, too bulky in this case. This, by the way, with this rattling sound was the lane, this lane assist. Now we're closing our view. It's a nice view on the lake. And now to our conclusion for today with the Jaguar I-PACE. For sure, if you also think about the other competitors, it is a very dynamic approach in the design, even though it's not my favorite color here for today, but I think here in a maybe Thomas blue color, this would look pretty decent. It has this typical Jaguar design DNA, but somehow it is in the Jaguar lineup something very unique. From the interior, a very interesting styling, also a lot of elements that has been updated if you compare to previous Jaguar models, which are now better in the build quality. So I think there's a big step forward also inside the brand. However, you feel a little bit caged in, or other said, it feels very sporty in the interior and you have to like that. So for example, the Tesla Model X is way more open in the interior space, whereas this one here more imitates a sports car feel. You can use it with 4 tall adults, no problem. However, since it has this coupe style form from the outside, you do lose some interior room. So there should be a little bit more room on the inside. I think something is wasted there, especially in the trunk width, for example, because it's still a rather big car. But again, all of the 3 competitors here, Tesla Model X, Audi e-tron and this one, approximately have the same size, same range, so they all come close. Also price-wise, the Jaguar I-PACE here, a little bit less expensive than the Tesla Model X, for example. Overall, this one here is definitely, one hot competitor in those big electric segment now, which is basically a new segment on its own now. So very interesting, this ride here today. Pretty sporty also from the driving experience. So this proves again that those electric cars definitely also fit to a brand that has its heritage in the rather sporty segment. What do you think? Looking forward to your comments there. Let's discuss this vehicle and also see you next time on Autogefuehl.